Naya, and welcome back to another episode of Papayas Per Usual. We are going to be continuing to read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Today we are on episode 10, chapter 16. Recap. Basically, Dorian Gray and his friend Alan Campbell basically get rid of the evidence of Basil Hallward's death by destroying the body with chemicals. How exactly he did it, it's not too descriptive because Dorian Gray walked out of the room. And then chapter 15, Dorian Gray went to Lady Narborough's little get together and spoke with Lord Henry after some time. Or I guess it was just a day's events after departing from him last night. And Lord Henry noticed that Dorian Gray was being a little fishy. And Dorian Gray almost slipped up in his little backstory. Alrighty, let us begin. Chapter 16. A cold rain began to fall, and the blurred street lamps looked ghastly in the dripping mist. The public houses were just closing, and dim men and women were clustering in broken groups round their doors. From some of the bars came the sound of horrible laughter. In others, drunkards brawled and screamed. Lying back in the hansom with his hat pulled over his forehead, Dorian Gray watched with listless eyes the sordid shame of the great city. And now and then he repeated to himself the words that Lord Henry had said to him on the first day that they had met. To cure the soul by means of the senses, and the senses by means of the soul. Yes, that was the secret. He had often tried it, and would try it again now. There were opium dens where one could buy oblivion, dens of horror where the memory of old sins could be destroyed by the madness of sins that were new. The moon hung low in the sky like a yellow skull. From time to time, hold on, my dogs are barking. Okay, no. Okay, I believe they have stopped. From time to time, a huge misshapen cloud outstretched a long arm across and hid it. The gas lamps grew fewer, and the streets more narrow and gloomy. Once the man lost his way and had to drive back a half-mile. A steam rose from the horse as it splashed up the puddles, sorry. The side windows of the hansom were clogged with a gray flannel mist. To cure the soul by means of the senses, and the senses by means of the soul. How the words rang in his ears. His soul, certainly, was sick to death. Was it true that the senses could cure it? Innocent blood had been spilled. What could atone for that? For that there was no atonement. But though forgiveness was impossible, forgetfulness was possible still, and he was determined to forget, to stamp the thing out, to crush it as one would crush the adder that had stung one. Indeed, what right had Basil to have spoken to him as he had done? Who had made him a judge over others? He had said things that were dreadful, horrible, not to be endured. Oh, on and on plodded the hansom, going slower, it seemed to him, at each step. He thrust up the trap and called to the man to drive faster. Sorry, one moment. The book is really chunky on my desk, and there's not a whole lot of desk space right now. Alrighty. The hideous hunger for opium began to gnaw at him. His throat burned and his delicate hands twitched nervously. He struck at the horse madly with his stick. The driver laughed and whipped up. He laughed in answer, and the man was silent. The way seemed interminable, and the streets like the black web of some sprawling spider. The monotony became unbearable, and as the mist thickened, he felt afraid. Then they passed by lonely brick fields. The fog was lighter here, and he could see the strange bottle-shaped kilns with their orange, fan-like tongues of fire. A dog barked as they went by, and far away in the darkness some wandering seagull screamed. The horse stumbled in a rut, then swerved aside and broke into a gallop. After some time, they left the clay road and rattled again over the rough paven streets. Most of the windows were dark, but now and then fantastic shadows were silhouetted against some lamplit blind. He watched them curiously. They moved like monstrous marionettes and made gestures like live things. He hated them. A dull rage was in his heart. As they turned a corner, a woman yelled something at them from an open door, and two men ran after the hansom for about 100 yards. The driver beat at them with his whip. It is said that passion makes one think in a circle. Certainly, with hideous iteration, the bitten lips of Dorian Gray shaped and reshaped those subtle words that dealt with soul and sense, till he had found in them the full expression, as it were, of his mood, and justified, by intellectual approval, passions that, without such justifications, would still have dominated his temper. From cell to cell of his brain crept the one thought, and the wild desire to live, most terrible of all men's appetites, quickened into force each trembling nerve and fiber. Ugliness that had once been hateful to him because it made things real became dear to him now for that very reason. Ugliness was the one reality, the coarse brawl, the loathsome den, the crude violence of disordered life. The very vileness of thief and outcast were more vivid in their intense actuality of impression than all the gracious shapes of art, the dreamy shadows of song. They were what he needed for forgetfulness. In 3 days he would be free. Suddenly the man drew up with a jerk at the top of the dark lane. Over the low roofs and jagged chimney stacks of the houses rose the black masts of ships. Wreaths of white mist clung like ghostly sails to the yards. "Somewhere about here, sir, ain't it?" he asked huskily through the trap. Dorian started and peered around. "This will do," he answered, and having got out hastily and given the driver the extra fare he had promised, he walked quickly in the direction of the quay. Here and there a lantern gleamed at the stern of some huge merchantman. The light shook and splintered in the puddles. A red glare came from an outward-bound steamer that was coaling. The slimy pavement looked like a wet mackintosh. He hurried on towards the left, glancing back now and then to see if he was being followed. In about 7 or 8 minutes he reached a small, shabby house that was wedged in between two gaunt factories. In one of the top windows stood a lamp. He stopped and gave a peculiar knock. After a little time he heard steps in the passage and the cabin being unhooked. The door opened quietly, and he went in without saying a word to the squat, misshapen figure that flattened itself into the shadow as he passed. At the end of the hall hung a tattered green curtain that swayed and shook in the gusty wind which had followed him in from the street. He dragged it aside and entered a long, low room which looked as if it had once been a third-rate dancing saloon. Shrill, flaring gas jets, dulled and distorted in the fly-blown mirrors that faced them, were ranged round the walls. Greasy reflectors of ribbed tin backed them, making quivering discs of light. The floor was covered with ochre-colored sawdust, trampled here and there into mud and stained with the dark rings of spilled liquor. Some Malays were crouching by a little charcoal stove, playing with bone counters and showing their white teeth as they chattered. In one corner, with his head buried in his arms, a sailor sprawled over a table, and by the tawdrily tawdrily and by the tawdrily painted bar that ran across one complete side stood two haggard women, mocking an old man who was brushing the sleeves of his coat with an expression of disgust. "He thinks he's got red ants on him," laughed one of them, as Dorian passed by. The man looked at her in terror and began to whimper. At the end of the room there was a little staircase, leading to a darkened chamber. As Dorian hurried up its 3 rickety steps, the heavy odor of opium met him. He heaved a deep breath, and his nostrils quivered with pleasure. When he entered, a young man with smooth yellow hair, who was bending over a lamp lighting a long, thin pipe, looked up at him and nodded in a hesitant manner. "You here, Adrian?" muttered Dorian. Where else should I be?" he answered listlessly. "None of the chaps will speak to me now. I thought you had left England." "Darlington is not going to do anything. My brother paid the bill at last. George doesn't speak to me either. I don't care," he added, with a sigh. "As long as one has this stuff, one doesn't want friends. I think I have too many friends." Dorian winced and looked round at the grotesque things that lay in such fantastic postures on the ragged mattresses. The twisted limbs, the gaping mouth, the staring, lustreless eyes fascinated him. He knew in what strange heavens they were suffering, and what dull hells were teaching them the secret of some new joy. They were better off than he was. He was prisoned in thought. Memory, like a horrible malady, was eating his soul away. From time to time he seemed to see the eyes of Basil Hallward looking at him. Yet he felt he could not stay. The presence of Adrian Singleton troubled him. He wanted to be where no one would know. He wanted to be where no one would know who he was. He wanted to escape from himself. "I am going on to the other place," he said after a pause. "On the wharf?" "Yes. That mad cat is sure to be there. They won't have her in this place now." Dorian shrugged his shoulders. "I am sick of women who love one. Women who hate one are much more interesting. Besides, this stuff is better." "Much the same. I like it better. Come and have something to drink. I must have something." "I don't want anything," murmured the young man. "Never mind." Adrian Singleton rose up wearily and followed Dorian to the bar. A half-caste in a ragged turban and a shabby ulster grinned a hideous greeting as he thrust a bottle of brandy and 2 tumblers in front of them. The woman sidled, sidled up and began to chatter. Dorian turned his back on them and said something in a low voice to Adrian Singleton. A crooked smile, like a Malay crease, writhed across the face of one of the women. "We are very proud tonight," she sneered. "For God's sake, don't talk to me," cried Dorian, stamping his foot on the ground. "What do you want? Money? Here it is. Don't ever talk to me again." 2 red sparks flashed for a moment in the woman's sodden eyes, then flickered out and left them dull and glazed. She tossed her head and raked the coins off the counter with greedy fingers. Her companion watched her enviously. "It's no use," sighed Adrian Singleton. "I don't care to go back. What does it matter? I am quite happy here." "You will write to me if you want anything, won't you?" said Dorian after a pause. "Perhaps. Good night, then." "Good night," answered the young man, passing up the steps and wiping his parched mouth with a handkerchief. Dorian walked to the door with a look of pain in his face. As he drew the curtain aside, a hideous laugh broke from the painted lips of the woman who had taken his money. "There goes the devil's bargain," she hiccoughed. She hiccoughed in a hoarse voice. "Curse you," he answered. "Don't call me that." She snapped her fingers. "Prince Charming is what you like to be called, ain't it?" she yelled after him. The drowsy sailor leaped to his feet as she spoke and looked wildly around. The sound of the shutting of the hall door fell on his ear. He rushed out as if in pursuit. Dorian Gray hurried along the quay through the drizzling rain. His meeting with Adrian Singleton had strangely moved him, and he wondered if the ruin of that young life was really to be laid at his door, as Basil Hallward had said to him with such infamy of insult. He bit his lip, and for a few seconds his eyes grew sad. Yet, after all, what did it matter to him? One's days were too brief to take the burden of another's errors on one's shoulders. Each man lived his own life and paid his own price for living it. The only pity was one had to pay so often for a single fault. One had to pay over and over again. Indeed, in her dealings with man, destiny never closed her accounts. Okay. Oops. There are moments, psychologists tell us, where the passion for sin, or for what the world calls sin, so dominates in nature that every fiber of the body, as every cell of the brain, seems to be instinct with fearful impulses. Men and women at such moments lose the freedom of their will. They move to their terrible end as automatons move. Choice is taken from them, and conscience is either killed, or if it lives at all, lives but to give rebellion its fascination and disobedience its charm. For all sins, as theologians weary not of reminding us, are sins of disobedience. When that high spirit, the morning star of evil, fell from heaven, it was as a rebel that he fell. Callous, concentrated on evil, with a stained mind and soul hungry for rebellion, Dorian Gray hastened on, quickening his step as he went, but as he darted aside into a dim archway that had served him often as a shortcut to the ill-famed place where he was going, he felt himself suddenly seized from behind, and before he had time to defend himself, he was thrust back against the wall with a brutal hand round his throat. He struggled madly for life, and by a terrible effort wrenched the tightening fingers away. In a second he heard the click of a revolver, and saw the gleam of a polished barrel pointing straight at his head, and the dusky form of a short, thick-set man facing him. "What do you want?" he gasped. "Keep quiet," said the man. "If you stir, I shoot you." "You are mad. What have I done to you?" "You wrecked the life of Sybil Vane," was the answer. "And Sybil Vane was my sister. She killed herself. I know it. Her death is at your door. I swore I would kill you in return. For years I have sought you. I had no clue, no trace. The two people who could have described you were dead. I knew nothing of you but the pet name she used to call you. I heard it tonight by chance. Make your peace with God, for tonight you are going to die." Dorian Gray grew sick with fear. "I never knew her," he stammered. "I never heard of her. You are mad. You had better confess your sin, for as sure as I am James Vane, you are going to die." There was a horrible moment. Dorian did not know what to say or do. "Down on your knees," growled the man. I give you 1 minute to take your peace, no more. I go on board tonight for India, and I must do my job first. 1 minute, that's all. Dorian's arms fell to his side. Paralyzed with terror, he did not know what to do. Suddenly, a wild hope flashed across his brain. Stop, he cried. How long ago is it since your sister died? Quick, tell me. 18 years, said the man. Why do you ask me? What do years matter? 18 years, laughed Dorian Gray, with a touch of triumph in his voice. 18 years. Set me under the lamp and look at my face. James Vane hesitated for a moment, not understanding what was meant. Then he seized Dorian Gray and dragged him from the archway. Dim and wavering as was the wind-blown light, yet it served to show him the hideous error, as it seemed, into which he had fallen, for the face of the man he had sought to kill had all the bloom of boyhood and all the unstained purity of youth. He seemed little more than a lad of 20 summers, hardly older, if older indeed at all, than his sister had been when they had parted so many years ago. It was obvious that this was not the man who had destroyed her life. He loosened his hold and reeled back. My God, he cried, and I would have murdered you. Dorian Gray drew a long breath. And you have been on the brink of committing a terrible crime, my man, he said, looking at him sternly. Let this be a warning to you to not take vengeance into your own hands. Forgive me, sir, muttered James Vane. I was deceived. A chance word I heard in that damned den set me on the wrong track. You had better go home and put that pistol away, or you may get into trouble, said Dorian, turning on his heel and going slowly down the street. James Vane stood on the pavement in horror. He was trembling from head to foot. After a little while, a black shadow that had been creeping along the dripping wall moved out into the light and came close to him with stealthy footsteps. He felt a hand laid on his arm and looked round with a start. It was one of the women who had been drinking at the bar. Why didn't you kill him? She hissed out, putting her haggard face up quite close to his. I knew you were following him when you rushed out from Dally's. You fool, you should have killed him. He has lots of money, and he's as bad as bad. We're gonna hold off on folding that page, actually. He's not the man I am looking for, he answered. And I want no man's money. I want a man's life. The man whose life I want must be nearly 40 now. This one is little more than a boy. Thank God I had not gotten his blood upon my hands. The woman gave a bitter laugh. Little more than a boy, she sneered. Why, man, it's nigh on 18 years since Prince Charming made me what I am. You lie, cried James Vane. She raised her hand up to heaven. Before God, I am telling the truth, she cried. Before God. Strike me dumb if it ain't so. He's the worst one that comes here. They say he has sold himself to the devil for a pretty face. It's nigh on 18 years since I met him. He hasn't changed much since then. I have, though, she added, with a sickly leer. You swear this? I swear it, came in hoarse echo from her flat mouth. But don't give me away to him, she whined. I am afraid of him. Let me have some money for my night's lodging. He broke from her with an oath and rushed to the corner of the street, but Dorian Gray had disappeared. When he looked back, the woman had vanished also. Ooh. Dorian barely missed death. I mean, it would have been quite deserved, but he barely missed it. Interesting how this story is like, it's really thought out. Sorry, these are some side notes I just want to throw in. It's a really great book. How it's connecting past and present actions. And how, as soon as it talked about the sailor, I was like, oh, that's the brother. That's Sybil Vane's brother. Oof. Okay. Chapter 17. A week later, Dorian Gray was sitting in the conservatory at Shelby Royal, talking to the pretty Duchess of Monmouth. who, with her husband, a jaded-looking man of 60, was amongst his guests. It was tea time, and the mellow light of the huge lace-covered lamp that stood on the table lit up the delicate china and hammered silver of the service at which the Duchess was presiding. Her white hands were moving daintily among the cups, and her full red lips were smiling at something that Dorian had whispered to her. Lord Henry was lying back in a silk-draped wicker chair, looking at them. On a peach-colored divan sat Lady Narborough, pretending to listen to the Duke's description of the last Brazilian beetle that he had added to his collection. 3 young men in elaborate smoking suits were handing tea cakes to some of the women. The house party consisted of 12 people, and there were more expected to arrive on the next day. "What are you two talking about?" said Lord Henry, strolling over to the table and putting his cup down. "I hope Dorian has told you about my planning for rechristening everything Glades. It is a delightful idea." "But I don't want to be rechristened, Harry," rejoined the Duchess, looking up at him with her wonderful eyes. "I am quite satisfied with my own name, and I am quite sure Mr. Grey should be satisfied with his." "My dear Glades, I would not alter either name for the world. They are both perfect. I was thinking chiefly of flowers. Yesterday I cut an orchid for my buttonhole. It was a marvelous spotted thing, as effective as the 7 deadly sins. In a thoughtless moment, I asked one of the gardeners what it was called. He told me it was a fine specimen of Robinsonia, or something dreadful of that kind. It is a sad truth, but we have lost the faculty of giving lovely names to things. Names are everything. I never quarrel with actions. My own quarrel is with words. That is the reason I hate vulgar realism in literature. The man who would call a spade should be compelled to use one. It is the only thing he is fit for. Then what should we call you, Harry?" she asked. "His name is Prince Paradox," said Dorian. "I recognize him in a flash," exclaimed the Duchess. "I won't hear of it," laughed Lord Henry, sinking into a chair. "From a label there is no escape. I refuse the title." "Royalties may not abdicate," fell as a warning from pretty lips. "You wish me to defend my throne, then?" "Yes, I give the truths of tomorrow." "I prefer the mistakes of today," she answered. "You disarm me, Glades," he cried, catching the wilfulness of her mood. "Of your shield, Harry, not of your spear." "I never tilt against beauty," he said with a wave of his hand. "That is your error, Harry. Believe me, you value beauty far too much." "How can you say that? I admit that I think that it is better to be beautiful than to be good, but on the other hand, no one is more ready than I am to acknowledge that it is better to be good than to be ugly." "Ugliness is one of the 7 deadly sins, then," cried the Duchess. "What becomes of your simile about the orchid?" "Ugliness is one of the 7 deadly virtues. Glades, you, as a good Tory, must not underrate them. Beer, the Bible, and the 7 deadly virtues have made our England what she is." "You don't like your country, then?" she asked. "I live in it." "That you may censure it the better." "Would you have me take the verdict of Europe on it?" he inquired. "What do they say of us?" "That Tartuffe has emigrated to England and opened a shop." "Is that yours, Harry?" "I give it to you. I could not use it. It is too true." "You need not be afraid. Our countrymen never recognize a description. They are practical. They are more cunning than practical. When they make up their ledger, they balance stupidity by wealth, and vice by hypocrisy. Still, we have done great things. Great things have been thrust upon us, ladies. We have carried their burden. Only as far as the stock exchange. She shook her head. I believe in the race, she cried. It represents the survival of the pushing. It has development. Decay fascinates me more. What of art? She asked. It is a malady. Love? An illusion. Religion? The fashionable substance for belief. Oh, the fashionable substitute for belief. You are a sceptic. Never. Skeptic? Oh, sorry. You are a skeptic. Never. Skepticism is the beginning of faith. What are you? To define is to limit. Give me a clue. The red snap. You would lose your way in the labyrinth. You bewilder me. Let us talk of someone else. Our host is a delightful topic. Years ago he was christened Prince Charming. Ah, don't remind me of that, cried Dorian Gray. Our host is rather horrid this evening, answered the Duchess, coloring. I believe he thinks that Monmouth married me on purely scientific principles as the best specimen he could find of a modern butterfly. Well, I hope he won't stick pins into you, Duchess, laughed Dorian. My. Oh. My maid does that already, Mr. Gray, when she is annoyed with me. And what does she get annoyed with you about, Duchess? For the most trivial things, Mr. Gray, I assure you. Usually because I come in at 10 minutes to 9 and tell her that I must be dressed by 8:30. How unreasonable of her. You should give her warning. I daren't. Mr. Gray. Why, she invents hats for me. You remember the one I wore at Lady Hillstone's garden party? You don't, but it is nice of you to pretend that you do. Well, she made it out of nothing. All good hats are made out of nothing. Like all good reputations, ladies, interrupted Lord Henry. Every effect that one produces gives one an enemy. To be popular, one must be a mediocrity. Not with women, said the Duchess, shaking her head. And women rule the world. I assure you we can't bear mediocrities. We women, as someone says, love with our ears, just as you men love with your eyes, if you ever love at all. It seems to me that we never do anything else, murmured Dorian. Ah, then you never really love, Mr. Gray, answered the Duchess with mock sadness. My dear ladies, cried Lord Henry, how can you say that? Romance lives by repetition, and repetition converts an appetite into an art. Besides, each time that one loves is the only time one has ever loved. Difference of object does not alter singleness of passion. It merely intensifies it. We can have in life but one great experience at best, and the secret of life is to reproduce that experience as often as possible. Even when one has been wounded by it, Harry, asked the Duchess after a pause. Especially when one has been wounded by it, answered Lord Henry. The Duchess turned and looked at Dorian Gray with a curious expression in her eyes. What do you say to that, Mr. Gray? She inquired. Dorian hesitated for a moment. Then he threw himself back and laughed. Threw his head back and laughed. I always agree with Harry, Duchess. Even when he is wrong. Harry is never wrong, Duchess. And does his philosophy make you happy? I have never searched for happiness. Who wants happiness? I have searched for pleasure. And found it, Mr. Gray? Often. Too often. The Duchess sighed. I am searching for peace, she said. And if I don't go and dress, I shall have none this evening. Let me get you some orchids, Duchess, cried Dorian, starting his feet and walking down the conservatory. You are flirting disgracefully with him, said Lord Henry to his cousin. You had better take care. He is very fascinating. If he were not, there would be no battle. Greeks meet Greek, then. Greek meets Greek, then. I am on the side of the Trojans. They fought for a woman. They were defeated. There are worse things than capture, she answered. You gallop with loose rein. Pace gives life, was the riposte. I shall write it in my diary tonight. What? That a burnt child loves the fire. I am not even singed. My wings are untouched. You use them for everything except flight. Courage has passed from men to women, and it is a new experience for us. You have a rival. Who? He laughed. Lady Narborough, he whispered. She perfectly adores him. You fill me with apprehension. The appeal to antiquity is fatal to us who are romanticists. Romanticists? You have all the methods of science. Men have educated us, but not explained to you. Described us as a sex, was her challenge. Sphinxes without secrets. She looked at him, smiling. How long Mr. Gray is, she said. Let us go and help him. I have not yet told him the color of my frock. Ah, you must suit your frock to his flowers, ladies. That would be a premature surrender. Romantic art begins with its climax. I must keep an opportunity for retreat. Is the Parthian manor? Oh, in the Parthian manor. They found safety in the desert. I could not do that. Women are not always allowed a choice, he answered, but hardly had he finished the sentence before, from the far end of the conservatory came a stifled groan, followed by the dull sound of a heavy fall. Everybody started up. The Duchess stood motionless in horror, and with fear in her eyes. Page. Lord Henry rushed through the flapping palms to find Dorian Gray lying face downwards on the tiled floor in a death-like swoon. He was carried at once into the blue drawing-room and laid upon one of the sofas. After a short time he came to himself and looked round with a dazed expression. What has happened? He asked. Oh, I remember. Am I safe here, Harry? He began to tremble. My dear Dorian, answered Lord Henry, you merely fainted. That was all. You must have overtired yourself. You had better not come down to dinner. I will take your place. No, I will come down, he said, struggling to his feet. I would rather come down. I must not be alone. He went to his room and dressed. There was a wild recklessness of gaiety in his manner as he sat at the table. But now and then a thrill of terror ran through him when he remembered that, pressed against the window of the conservatory like a white handkerchief, he had seen the face of James Vane watching him. Ooh. Alrighty. I think I'm gonna read chapter 18 too. It seems pretty short. Oh, short was an understatement. Overstatement. Understatement. It's a little long. But nonetheless, let us read it. The next day he did not leave the house, and indeed spent most of the time in his own room, sick with a wild terror of dying, and yet indifferent to life itself. The consciousness of being hunted, snared, and tracked down had begun to dominate him. If the tapestry did but tremble in the wind, he shook. The dead leaves that were blown against the leaded pane seemed to him like his own wasted resolutions and wild regrets. When he closed his eyes, he saw again the sailor's face peering through the mist-stained glass, and horror seemed once more to lay its hand upon his heart. But perhaps it had been only his fancy that he had called vengeance out of the night, and set the hideous shapes of punishment before him. Actual life was chaos, but there was something terribly logical in the imagination. It was the imagination that set remorse to dog the feet of sin. It was the imagination that made each crime bear its misshapen brood. In the common world of fact, the wicked were not punished, nor the good rewarded. Success was given to the strong, failure thrust upon the weak. That was all. Besides, had any stranger been prowling round the house, he would have been seen by the servants or the keepers. Had any footmarks been found on the flower beds, the gardeners would have reported it. Yes, it had been merely fancy. Sybil Vane's brother had not come back to kill him. He had sailed away in his ship to founder in some winter sea. From him, at any rate, he was safe. Why, the man did not know who he was, and could not know who he was. The mask of youth had saved him. And yet, as if it had merely been an illusion, how terrible it was to think that conscience could raise such fearful phantoms, and give them visible form, and make them move before one. What sort of a life would his be if, day and night, shadows of his crime were to peer at him from silent corners, to mock him from secret places, to whisper in his ear as he sat at the feast, to wake him with icy fingers as he lay asleep? As the thought crept through his brain, he grew pale with terror, and the air seemed to him to have become suddenly colder. Oh, in what a wild hour of madness he had killed his friend! How ghastly the mere memory of the scene. He saw it all again. Each hideous detail came back to him with added horror. Out of the black cave of time, terrible and swathed in scarlet, rose the image of his sin. When Lord Henry came in at 6 o'clock, he found him crying as one whose heart will break. It was not till the third day that he ventured to go out. There was something in the clear, pine-scented air of that winter morning that seemed to bring him back from his joyousness and his ardor for life. But it was not merely the physical conditions and environment that had caused the change. His own nature had revolted against the excess of anguish that had sought to maim and mar the perfection of its calm. With subtle and finely wrought temperaments it is always so. The strong passions must either bruise or bend. They either slay the man or themselves die. Shallow sorrows and shallow loves live on. The loves and sorrows that are great are destroyed by their own plenitude. Besides, he had convinced himself that he had been the victim of a terror-stricken imagination, and looked back now on his fears with something of pity and not of contempt. After breakfast, he walked with the Duchess for an hour in the garden, and then drove across the park to join the shooting party. The crisp frost lay like salt upon the grass. The sky was an inverted cup of blue metal. A thin film of ice bordered the flat, reed-grown lake. At the corner of the pine wood, he caught sight of Sir Geoffrey Colston, the Duchess's brother, jerking 2 spent cartridges out of his gun. He jumped from the cart, and having told the groom to take the Mar home, made his way towards his guest through the withered bracken and rough undergrowth. "Have you had good sport, Geoffrey?" he asked. "Not very good, Dorian. I think most of the birds have gone to the open. I dare say it will be better after lunch, when we get to new ground." Dorian strolled along by his side. The keen aromatic air, the brown and red lights that glimmered in the woods, the hoarse cries the beaters ring out from time to time, and the sharp snaps of the guns that followed, fascinated him, and filled him with a sense of delightful freedom. He was dominated by the carelessness of happiness, by the high indifference of joy. Suddenly, from a lumpy tussock of old grass some 20 yards in front of them, with black-tipped ears erect and long-hindered limbs throwing it forward, started a hare. It bolted for a thicket of alders. Sir Geoffrey put his gun to his shoulder. But there was something in the animal's grace of movement that strangely charmed Dorian Gray, and he cried out at once, "Don't shoot it, Geoffrey. Let it live." "What nonsense!" Dorian laughed his companion, and as the hare bounded into the thicket he fired. There were 2 cries heard, the cry of a hare in pain, which is dreadful, the cry of a man in agony, which is worse. "Good heavens, I have hit a beater!" exclaimed Sir Geoffrey. What a donkey's butt the man was to get in front of the guns. "Stop shooting there," he called out at the top of his voice. "A man is hurt." The head keeper came running up with a stick in his hand. "Where, sir? Where is he?" he shouted. At the same time, the firing ceased along the line. "Here," Sir Geoffrey answered angrily, hurrying towards the thicket. "Why on earth don't you keep your men back? Spoiled my shooting for the day." Dorian Gray watched them as they plunged into the alder clump, brushing the lithe, swinging branches aside. In a few moments they emerged, dragging a body after them into the sunlight. He turned away in horror. It seemed to him that misfortune followed wherever he went. He heard Sir Geoffrey ask if the man was really dead, and the affirmative answer of the keeper. The wood seemed to him to have become suddenly alive with faces. There was the tramping of myriad feet and the low buzz of voices. A great copper-breasted pheasant came beating through the broad boughs overhead. After a few moments that were to him, in his perturbed state, like endless hours of pain, he felt a hand laid on his shoulder. He started and looked around. "Dorian," said Lord Henry, "I had better tell them that the shooting is stopped for today. It would not look well to go on." "I wish it were stopped forever, Harry," he answered bitterly. "The whole thing is hideous and cruel. Is the man—" He could not finish the sentence. "I am afraid so," rejoined Lord Henry. "He got the whole charge of the shot in his chest. He must have died almost instantaneously. Come, let us go home." They walked side by side in the direction of the avenue for nearly 50 yards without speaking. Then Dorian looked at Lord Henry and sighed with a heavy sigh. "It is a bad omen, Harry, a very bad omen." "What is it?" asked Lord Henry. "Oh, this accident, I suppose. My dear fellow, it can't be helped. It can't be helped. It was the man's own fault. Why did he get in front of the guns? Besides, it is nothing to us. It is rather awkward for Geoffrey, of course. It does not do to pepper beaters. It makes people think that one is a wild shot. And Geoffrey is not. He shoots very straight. But there's no use talking about the matter." Dorian shook his head. "It is a bad omen, Harry. I feel as if something horrible were going to happen to some of us. To myself, perhaps," he added, passing his hand over his eyes with a gesture of pain. The elder man laughed. "The only thing horrible in the world is ennui, Dorian. That is the one sin for which there is no forgiveness. But we are not likely to suffer from it, unless these fellows keep chattering about this thing at dinner. I must tell them that the subject is to be tabooed. As for omens, there's no such thing as an omen. Destiny does not send us heralds. She is too wise or too cruel for that. Besides, what on earth could happen to you, Dorian? You have everything in the world that a man can want. There is no one who would not want to be delighted to change places with you. There is no one with whom I would not change places, Harry. Don't laugh like that. I am telling you the truth. The wretched peasant who had just died is better off than I am. I have no terror of death. It is the coming of death that terrifies me. Its monstrous wings seem to wheel in the leaden air around me. Good heavens, don't you see a man moving behind the trees there, watching me, waiting for me?" Lord Henry looked in the direction in which the trembling gloved hand was pointing. "Yes," he said, smiling, "I see the gardener waiting for you. I suppose he wants to ask you what flowers you wish to have on the table tonight. How absurdly nervous you are, my dear fellow. You must come and see my doctor when we get back to town." Dorian heaved a sigh of relief as he saw the gardener approaching. The man touched his hat, glanced for a moment at Lord Henry in a hesitating manner, and then produced a letter, which he handed to his master. "Her Grace told me to wait for an answer," he murmured. Dorian put the letter into his pocket. "Tell her Grace that I am coming in," he said coldly. The man turned round and went rapidly in the direction of the house. "How fond women of doing dangerous things," laughed Lord Henry. "It is one of the qualities in them that I admire most. A woman will flirt with anybody in the world as long as other people are looking on. How fond you are of saying dangerous things, Harry. In the present instance you are quite astray. I like the Duchess very much, but I don't love her. And the Duchess loves you very much, but she likes you less. So you are excellently matched. You are talking Scandal, Harry, and there is never any basis for scandal. The basis of every scandal is an immoral certainty, said Lord Henry, lighting a cigarette. You would sacrifice anybody, Harry, for the sake of an epigram. The world goes to the altar of its own accord, was the answer. I wish I could love, cried Dorian, with a deep note of pathos in his voice. But I seem to have lost the passion and forgotten the desire. I am too much concentrated on myself. My own personality has become a burden to me. I want to escape, to go away, to forget. It was silly of me to come down here at all. I think I shall send a wire to Harvey to have the yacht got ready. On a yacht one is safe. Safe from what, Dorian? You are in some trouble. Why not tell me what it is? I know I would help you. Oh, you know I would help you. I can't tell you, Harry, he answered sadly, and I dare say it is only a fancy of mine. This unfortunate accident has upset me. I have a horrible presentiment that something of the kind may happen to me. What nonsense! I hope it is, but I cannot help feeling it. Ah, here is the Duchess, looking like Artemis in a tailor-made gown. You see we have come back, Duchess. I have heard all about it, Mr. Gray, she answered. Poor Geoffrey is terribly upset, and it seems that you asked him not to shoot the hare. How curious. Yes, it was very curious. I don't know what made me say it. Some whim, I suppose. It looked the loveliest of little live things. But I am sorry they told you about the man. It is a hideous subject. It is an annoying subject, broke in Lord Henry. It has no psychological value at all. Now, if Geoffrey had done the thing on purpose, how interesting he would be. I should like to know someone who had committed a real murder. Ooh, how horrid of you, Harry, cried the Duchess. Isn't it, Mr. Gray? Harry, Mr. Gray's ill again. He is going to faint. One second, I'm gonna fix this fold because it's kind of funky. Apologies for the noise in the background. Unfortunately, my little brother is quite the loud individual compared to me. So, many apologies if you hear it in the background and it is disturbing your peace. I'll go ask him again to turn it down a little bit. 1 second. My eyes are growing dreadfully tired. This book and myself are putting me to sleep. Probably also does not help that I woke up at an absurd hour this morning and went to bed at an absurd time last night. Alrighty. Dorian drew himself up with an effort and smiled. It is nothing, Duchess, he murmured. My nerves are dreadfully out of order. That is all. I am afraid I walked too far this morning. I didn't hear what Harry said. Was it very bad? You must tell me some other time. I think I must go and lie down. You will excuse me, won't you? They had reached the great flight of steps that led from the conservatory onto the terrace. As the glass door closed behind Dorian, Lord Henry turned and looked at the Duchess with slumberous eyes. With his slumberous eyes. Are you very much in love with him? He asked. She did not answer for some time, but stood gazing at the landscape. I wish I knew, she said at last. He shook his head. Knowledge would be fatal. It is the uncertainty that charms one. A mist makes things wonderful. One may lose one's way. All ways end at the same point, my dear ladies. What is that? Delusion. It was my debut in life, she sighed. It came to you crowned. I'm very tired. Oh, I am tired of strawberry leaves. They become you. Only in public. You would miss them, said Lord Henry. I will not part with the petal. Monmouth has ears. Old age is dull of hearing. Has he never been jealous? I wish he had been. He glanced about as if in search of something. What are you looking for? She inquired. The button from your foil, he answered. You have dropped it, she laughed. I still have the mask. It makes your eyes lovelier, was his reply. She laughed again. Her teeth showed like white seeds in a scarlet fruit. Upstairs, in his own room, Dorian Gray was lying on the sofa. With terror in every tingling fiber of his body, life had suddenly become too hideous a burden for him to bear. The dreadful death of the unlucky beater, shot in the thicket like a wild animal, had seemed to him to prefigure death for himself also. He had nearly swooned at what Lord Henry had said in a chance mood of cynical jesting. At 5 o'clock he rang his bell for his servant and gave him orders to pack his things for the night express to town, and to have the brougham at the door by 8:30. He was determined not to sleep another night at Selby Royal. It was an ill-omened place. Death walked there in the sunlight. The grass of the forest had been spotted with blood. Then he wrote a note to Lord Henry, telling him that he was going up to town to consult his doctor and asking him to entertain his guests in his absence. As he was putting it into the envelope, a knock came to the door, and his valet informed him that the head keeper wished to see him. He frowned and bit his lip. Send him in, he muttered, after some moments' hesitation. As soon as the man entered, Dorian pulled his checkbook out of a drawer and spread it up before him. I suppose you have come about the unfortunate accident of this morning, Thornton, he said, taking up a pen. Yes, sir, answered the gamekeeper. Was the poor fellow married? Had he any people dependent on him? Asked Dorian, looking bored. If so, I should not like them to be left in want, and will send them any sum of money you may think necessary. We don't know who he is, sir. That is what I took the liberty of coming to you about. Don't know who he is, said Dorian listlessly. What do you mean? Wasn't he one of your men? No, sir. Never saw him before. Seems like a sailor, sir. The pen dropped from Dorian Gray's hand, and he felt as if his heart had suddenly stopped beating. A sailor? He cried out. Did you say a sailor? Yes, sir. He looked as if he had been a sort of sailor, tattooed on both arms, and that kind of thing. Was there anything found on him? Said Dorian, leaning forward and looking at the man with startled eyes. Anything that would tell his name? Some money. Sir, not much, and a 6-shooter. There was no name of any kind. A decent-looking man, sir, but rough-like. A sort of sailor, we think. Dorian started to his feet. A terrible hope fluttered past him. He clutched at it madly. Where's the body? He exclaimed. Quick, I must see it at once. It is in an empty stable in the home farm, sir. The folk don't like to have that sort of thing in their houses. They say a corpse brings bad luck. The home farm. Go there at once and meet me. Tell one of the grooms to bring my horse round. No, never mind. I'll go to the stables myself. It will save time. In less than a quarter of an hour, Dorian Gray was galloping down the long avenue as hard as he could go. The trees seemed to sweep past him in spectral procession, and wild shadows to fling themselves across his path. Once the mare swerved at a white gate post and nearly threw him. He lashed her across the neck with his crop. She cleft the dusky air like an arrow. The stones flew from her hooves. At last he reached the home farm. 2 men were loitering in the yard. He leaped from the saddle and threw the reins to one of them. In the farthest stable a light was glimmering. Something seemed to tell him that the body was there, and he hurried to the door and put his hand upon the latch. There he paused for a moment, feeling that he was on the brink of a discovery that would either make or mar his life. Then he thrust the door open and entered. On a heap of sacking in the far corner was lying the dead body of a man, dressed in a coarse shirt and a pair of blue trousers. A spotted handkerchief had been placed over his face. A coarse candle, stuck in a bottle, sputtered beside it. Dorian Gray shuddered. He felt that his could not be the hand to take the handkerchief away, and called out to one of the farm servants to come to him. "Take that thing off the face. I wish to see it," he said, clutching at the door-post for support. When the farm servant had done so, he stepped forward. A cry of joy broke from his lips. The man who had been shot in the thicket was James Vane. He stood there for some minutes, looking at the dead body. As he rode home, his eyes were full of tears, for he knew he was safe. Wow, what a turn of events. I for one thought that Dorian Gray was gonna die this chapter. Part of me was hoping it because, like, you know, he's kind of an awful guy. But little did we know he would survive and James Vane would die. What an interesting turn of events. Wow, that was a really powerful chapter. I don't even know what to say after that. Wow. I don't even know how to comprehend anything right now. That was a really powerful chapter. Like, how is this story going to end? I guess we'll find out later. But that'll be it for today. Hopefully we'll read chapter 19 and 20 at the same time and see how this story ends. For now, that is it. Okay, so have a good day, have a good midday, have a good night. Remember to stay safe, have fun, and be kind. Salamat Paya, so much for watching/listening, and I will see you in the next one. Toodles for now. Goodbye.